Welcome, everybody. I'm Margaret Fisher. I'm one of the coordinators of the Plant Nova Natives campaign, and this is the latest in our series on Ask the Experts, where you can get personalized advice on your questions. Today, we're so happy that Jim Hurley has joined us, and he is truly an expert on invasive plants because not only does he just know about it, but it sounds to me as if he's been personally removing invasives from square miles of property. So the format he has proposed is that we go through your questions. And that was basically the whole idea of the series, is for people to be able to have their own questions answered. So we are recording, and just be aware of that. If that's a problem for you and you're already recording, getting your video recorded, let me know, because I can always delete the recording if you hate that. But you'd have to tell me quickly, because I'll be sending this out on the email probably today or tomorrow. Jim, please take it away.
Hi, folks. I am Jim Hurley with the Blue Ridge Prism, PRISM being an acronym for Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management. And regional, by regional, I mean we cover a 10-county area, arrayed along Blue Ridge from Nelson up to Rappahannock on the east side of the ridge, and then Augusta up to Clark on the west side, the Shenandoah Valley side of the ridge. And we're the only operating PRISM in the state, and we want to get more PRISMs going. Since our founding in 2014, 2015, there's been a tremendous amount of activity, and we've gotten a lot done. I want to spend just 5 minutes or so covering our activities with Blue Ridge Prism. I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you a little bit more about the organization and what we're doing, and maybe even solicit some generous donations on your part too, because we're funded by matching grants, and all of our operations, staff and the like, other than things like this, which some of us volunteers are doing, are all funded by the public, matching certain foundation grants that we receive. So just a few quick comments, because I really want to get to your questions as soon as possible. A few things about the PRISM. Our primary mission is to educate, inspire, and facilitate landowners' work on invasive species on their own properties. And to that extent, we're trying to get resources to them, financial resources, and hold workshops to disseminate information about identification and control of invasive plants. And so that we started out really focusing there on the 10 counties, but as we got deeper into the work, our relationships with state agencies and their directors, leadership, and then political figures has become more and more important, so that over the last 2 to 3 years, we have been much more active at the state level, intending to influence state policy and programs on invasive species control. And several examples of that. Well, before going into those statewide policies, just tell you that focusing again initially on our 10-county region, we've gotten about $650,000 in direct landowner financing, financial support to landowners to incent them to do the work on their properties. We won a $250,000 award from the DuPont Settlement Program in 2017. That, in combination with the Forest Service grant from the State Department of Forestry, we've amassed about $300,000 to control wavy leaf grass, probably our most threatening woodland species at the herbaceous level. Bittersweet probably being the most challenging plant at the canopy level for our natural areas and forests. So we got some big wavy leaf control projects going on around the region, again, primarily in um, within the within our 10 county area. We have spearheaded and inspired the dedication of $200,000 by VDOT to do a roadside vegetation study to determine which native plants are already doing well on Virginia's roadsides, that in service of changing VDOT's planting regimen from entirely invasive species to a native plant regimen. And we are in the first 6 months of that study, and we'll get the results in about a year and a half or so. We are members of Virginia's Noxious Weed Advisory Committee, and we've seen it since we obtained a change in the noxious weed law in 2016. We've seen it as our mission to try to move as many plants from the state's invasive plant list, which the Department of Conservation and Recreation, DCR, and their organization, the Division of Natural Heritage, that they curate. It's a total of 90 plants. What we found, to our one of our major challenges, to our great consternation, is about half of those plants are being sold by the horticultural industry in the state. And the compromise that we negotiated with the industry in 2015 and 16 allowed us to list as noxious weeds plants that are already widely disseminated in the landscape, which heretofore, or there to then, I guess, we were not able to up until the change in the law. But we had to accept in return for that change in the law that the industry's insistence that any plant that is commercially viable in the state of Virginia, by definition, cannot be listed as a noxious weed. So that's a bit of the tussle that we have been in. And that has led to great consternation, not amongst ourselves, only amongst ourselves, but amongst groups like Margaret's and the Native Plant Society and the Sierra Club, Friends of Dyke Marsh, Audubon Society of Northern Virginia, and others to pursue a legislative initiative to study this issue and study ways in which we can remove more non-native invasive plants from the trade and encourage the planting and the use of native plants in Virginia. And so this is probably our top priority right now at the state level. And I and others have been meeting first to craft the legislation and then to lobby to get it through, and now planning on what we want to get done through this legislative study committee, which met for the first time on June 9th and meets for the second time on July 28th in Pocahontas State Park. Any of you who are interested in that issue can show up as members of the public to this meeting where these issues will be discussed and negotiated. We are hoping for good things. We're expecting a difficult negotiation, and we would like as many plants from the invasive, Virginia's invasive species list to be removed from the trade. And the trade, of course, nurseries and growers, they have a financial stake in growing and selling as many of these plants as they possibly can. So you can see the discussion that we're in on those plants, amongst others. So those are some examples of big things that we're doing at the state level. I mentioned before that we're 100% foundation and publicly funded. All of our foundation grants require 50-50 matches. So we'd love for you to join in our efforts and express support to our work regionally and statewide by donating to the Blue Ridge Prism. And there's a donate button on our website, which is Blue Ridge Prism, all one word, .org. BlueRidgePrism.org. And that the website is also chock full of resources, many of which might answer many of your questions. Those that you've already teed up for us to talk through today, as well as others that might not have been asked. Full of fact sheets focusing on particular invasive plants, how to identify them, how to control them, herbicide recommendations, as well as how to effectively and safely use herbicides, things like that. So with that sort of overview of our work, I'd love to take your questions, and I want to warn you in advance that my internet connection here from rural Greene County, where I'm on the verge of being off the grid, off the internet map, it's tenuous here. So if everybody's screens start freezing on my end and voices start freezing and I start to miss things, I'm going to stop my video because that's sucking up bandwidth. And if I do that, I'll be able to participate, even though you'll just be looking at my name in my rectangle. So with that, I'll turn it over to Margaret, and we'll start going down through the questions that have already been asked. And I will respond to them. And I think Margaret will unmute anybody who asked the question. She knows who asked them. And so that'll enable a back and forth between me and the questioner. And I'd like for this to be as much a dialogical process as we can make it, less one way than interactive. And so I anticipate a good discussion, and I hope to be able to answer your questions. Oh, maybe I should say a little bit about myself. I only introduced the Prism and forgot to introduce myself. I've been doing this work for about 20 years and cut my teeth on it in Northern Virginia. And began to work on a natural area and a condominium association in Arlington in 2001, 2, somewhere in there. And then just went on to clear 5 acres, 6 acres in that condominium association, and then joined the Master Naturalists and led volunteer efforts in Arlington County, Alexandria, and Fairfax County parks, dozens and dozens of invasive removal events. And in 2014, moved to a 156-acre property from Northern Virginia down to where I am in Greene County, a rural setting right at the base of the main Blue Ridge, where I've been working assiduously on our 156 acres, and then serving in effect as a general contractor or consultant to many landowners, jurisdictions, on their invasive projects, invasive plant projects, sort of consulting to them, leading work, volunteer events, and things like that. So lots of work at both the sort of urban-suburban level, as well as the rural level. That said, take it away, Margaret.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, great. So what I'm planning to do is read each of the questions that were submitted ahead of time, and then I'll read any new questions that come in on the chat. And then if there are still others that you are on your mind that you don't feel like typing, you could speak up at the end. And so as I read your question, you can unmute yourself to add any additional information or follow-up questions. And I'm going to start with the first one. It was like there were at least 3 people who wrote in about English ivy, and one of them sent us a picture. Carolyn sent us a picture. So let me get that up. Not that you don't necessarily know what it looks like, but I think it's fun to see the visual. Are you seeing the screen with the English ivy?
Yes.
Got it.
All right. Okay. So that's the question. What do you do about this? How do you do it easily or less hardly?
So if I remember reading this question a few weeks ago, and who is this? Is this
Carolyn?
whose question? What?
Carolyn, among others.
Okay.
This is
yeah,
Carolyn's
so Carolyn.
photo.
Okay, Carolyn. So that there were some efforts already underway to do some work on this. So I want to respect any work that has been done. But if this were my project alone, what I would do would be, if there are plants in that bed that are valuable plants that you don't want to kill, I would wait until late fall, early winter, November, December timeframe, and apply a 4%, 3 to 4% solution of glyphosate and a surfactant to it, and you could probably kill that in that area in about 10 minutes of work, and it'll brown and die off within a few weeks or so. I see in the background, I think too, if this infestation goes beyond the white fence, it's climbing trees in the background. And that implies a two-step process. One would be cutting the climbing vines. Everything above the cut will die, and applying concentrated herbicide to the cut stumps that have been climbing the trees. And then following that with the foliar application. By that meaning using a backpack sprayer and spraying the foliage of the ground level plants with the herbicide. So that is the quickest, easiest, and really least toxic way, if you're considering other types of herbicides or others that might consider. This question comes up: can we use a salt solution, or can we use a vinegar concentrate solution? Those interventions have much greater impact on soil activity and soil microbes than glyphosate does, which is one of the safest of all of our herbicides, which is perfectly effective on English ivy. So that's what I would do if there are plants that you want to preserve that are in that bed, because they will have senesced by that time. They will have gone to ground, lost their foliage, and they will not be vulnerable to the herbicide treatment. If there's nothing that you're concerned about saving, you could do the treatment right now, and wait a few weeks, and you'll find that the root systems will be dying. And if you're concerned about timing and when you might want to plant, because that is a bed, looks like a focal bed, and you might want to replace them with some assemblage of plants of your choice. And then you could easily do that in a September, October timeframe, which is an ideal time to get new plantings going.
Okay,
so that's an overview.
For people who resist who are willing to put in the labor to do this by hand, what technique would you suggest?
Well, I still have lower back pain from using that method 12 years ago on a site in Arlington, and we spent, a similar site. Spent weeks, months, in fact, a couple of months, digging out English ivy with like dandelion. I don't know what those things are called. Dandelion root diggers and trowels. It depends on how pliable the soil is, just how much work you're going to end up doing. But the issue here is that if you leave chunks of an English ivy root in the soil, it continues to live and it will resprout. And so you'll be fighting this battle for a while until you get every root piece out of the ground.
How about smothering it first with like a tarp?
Yes, and so I personally do not have experience with plastic, with tarps, with the smothering method, and all of these things you could try and see how it goes.
Okay, can you explain about? Go ahead, Carolyn.
Could you say a little bit more about the effect of vinegar? You said it has much more impact on the soil. What kind of impact are you thinking of? That we would want to be replacing this area with another ground cover.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it's good. Certainly, vinegar will change the acidity of the oil of the soil, and it has an immediate effect on soil microbes. Because of the concentrated acidity that you'll be pouring on the plant and will end up in soil. How long that acidity lasts, the soil activity of that acidity lasts, and so to what extent it would affect any subsequent plantings that you would put in, I cannot tell you. I would just say that this very question just came up today on the Mid-Atlantic Invasive Plant MAIPC, Invasive Plant Committee or Commission, I forget what it's called, listserv, where somebody wanted to take out Japanese stiltgrass with vinegar. And the response from a professional was the response that I've heard for years about the impact of vinegar on soil microbes. So if you're concerned about soil microbes, don't use vinegar.
Can you explain about surfactants? I think we understood that that's the thing that kills or causes problems for amphibians.
Yeah.
Can you do without, or is there one that's better than another? How about dish soap?
So dish soap apparently was mentioned too as a way to kill stiltgrass. And same response on applying dish soap, that there is some persistent soil activity from using dish soap as a surfactant or a carrier of the herbicide. And to a definition of a surfactant is another additive to the herbicide water solution that enables the herbicide to stick to the leaf of the plant and then be absorbed through the cuticle of the leaf into the plant. We're talking here about systemic herbicides that are translocated down into the root system. And what we're trying to do is kill the entire plant down to the root system dead, which is critical for perennial plants as opposed to annuals. It's also helpful. It's helpful to have a surfactant that is called a penetrant surfactant on a plant like English ivy or Euonymus fortunei or winter creeper or vinca, major or minor. Those plants have waxy cuticles that tend to be resistant to the penetration of the herbicide through it into the leaf for systemic translocation down into the root system. So you need a good, strong surfactant. These are called penetrant surfactants. One that is on the market that I use is called Sidekick, Cidekick. Tend to buy that in 2.5 gallon containers. Whether it's available in a smaller amount, I'm not sure. And it is to get back to Margaret's original question, it is an aquatic safe surfactant, as opposed to the surfactant that is added to the typical Roundup formulation, which is not aquatic safe and it's not safe being used around standing or flowing water because it's toxic to macroinvertebrates, to amphibians, and water creatures living in water. So you don't want to use around any standing or flowing water Roundup. You want to start with a glyphosate. Roundup is glyphosate plus an unsafe surfactant. But you can buy glyphosate products like Rodeo, R-O-D-E-O, or from southern states, co-ops, they have a 41% generic glyphosate product that comes with no surfactants in it as well. And you would buy your own surfactant and add a couple of ounces to your formulation. This was if any of you are going to do this work with a backpack sprayer and have large enough areas where a backpack sprayer would come in handy, let me give you the recipe for these types of applications. In general, you're going to be spraying a foliar application of a 2% concentration of the herbicide. When you buy these herbicides, either glyphosate, which kills everything, or triclopyr, which is a broadleaf plant-specific herbicide, which only kills broadleaf plants and does not harm grasses, or a third category of herbicides, which are grass-specific herbicides that only kill grasses and don't kill broadleaf plants. In all of these cases, generally a 2% concentration of the herbicide works, is sufficient. And with the broadleaf and glyphosate herbicides, generally they come in concentrations on the market, products that are 50% concentrations. So you have to do the math and cut that 50% concentration down to 2%. And in general, that's going to require about 3 ounces of herbicide per gallon of water. And then for the surfactant, that will require 1 ounce of the surfactant per gallon of water. And then if you want to know what you've treated, what you sprayed, and what you have not, so you're tracking your efforts and don't have to go over the same area multiple times, you want to use what's called a marker dye, which is an extremely strong dye. Generally it comes in blue, and a product out there that we use is called Bullseye, which is a water-soluble marker dye, extremely powerful, very, very concentrated, and all it takes is 1 ounce of that marker dye per 1 ounce of water to be part of this mix as well. So if you have yourself a 3-gallon backpack and you want to use, you have enough of an area that you're going to use 3 gallons worth of herbicide, you'll be mixing 3 ounces of water, 8 to 9 ounces of herbicide for a 2% concentration, 3 ounces of surfactant, and 3 ounces of marker dye. And that's a standard formulation, standard recipe for a foliar application. Back to English ivy. English ivy is difficult to kill, and so is bittersweet, and so is well, what else was I going to mention? Euonymus, winter creeper, and vinca. And so they require, using glyphosate on them, they will require a 4% concentration of the herbicide, meaning that you have to double the number of ounces of herbicide on English ivy. Same amount of surfactant, same amount of dye, but you'll be using on the order of 16, 17 ounces of a 50% concentration of glyphosate for a foliar treatment of English ivy. How's that for detail? I really went into the weeds there.
Beautiful. That's exactly what we need in order to actually apply any of this. So appreciate that very much. Karen, see, you had your hand up. Do you still have a question?
Hey there. No, just wondering, I don't know how to spell any of those things that you're saying. And also, Pratima asked that you type out just the formula someplace. I mean, you don't have to do it now, but if you could just send it to us later, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, let me get that together and send it later. Maybe Jim can help me with that.
Sure, and maybe the spelling of these chemicals, we can do that. Easier to do that in writing than verbally.
Great. I wonder why they use something dangerous in Roundup when they could use something safe.
Good question. It just must be cheaper and easier for them. I don't know.
Okay, all right, well, that was very illuminating. How about Japanese stiltgrass? That's our next question. And I think we may have had more than one person ask that. So how do we get rid of that?
Well, thank you for the question about stiltgrass. It's a particular passion of mine. That is, I passionately hate stiltgrass. And on our property, we have acres of it in various spots around 156 acres. And so we began treatment on it in 2014. So I want to give you a sobering message up front. That is that it's going to take you 5 to 7 years to exhaust the seed bank. So you need to be prepared, depending on the intensity of the infestation, how long it has been there. There can be some variability, I guess, in the depth or longevity of the seed bank, depending on how intensive and how long it's been there. But in general, count on 5 to 7 years of coming back to the same area again and again and again until you kill the last plant. And of course, as well, you need to be thinking strategically about the possibility that new plants can be brought in from the outside. So that if your property is in a low part of a watershed and there tends to be surface flow from upslope somewhere or upstream somewhere, or you might get flooded from time to time, likely you'll be fighting this battle indefinitely. And I can tell you that Fairfax County pretty much walks away from stiltgrass control. Fairfax County Parks Authority walks away from stiltgrass control in any of at a minimum from any lower part of the watershed, because unless you control stiltgrass 3, 4, 5, 6 miles up the watershed, any big storm is going to just wash new seed into an area that you've just treated. And so it's a losing battle unless you start from the top down. I want to give you that big strategic picture. This also, again, implies relationship building and connectivity and the willingness to do some cold calling on your neighbors, door knocking, to see if you can enlist them in your efforts if you are dependent on their efforts to try to get your infestation on your property under control. So I want to hit you with those two big important sort of strategic considerations first. To turn to control, oftentimes Japanese stiltgrass is laced with or mixed in with valuable native plants. One, for example, a very beautiful native grass called Liersia virginica, or Virginia whitegrass, which occupies the same kind of habitat as Japanese stiltgrass. You'll find that a grass-specific herbicide like Post, P-O-A-S-T, or clethodim, which is also the name of the chemical. Clethodim 2E is a brand product. These are grass-specific herbicides that only kill grasses. If you use a low concentration of those, you can largely spare the native grasses. You might be successful in sparing the native grasses, but you, out of an excess of caution, you might also hand weed the stiltgrass out of Virginia whitegrass patches and leave enough Virginia whitegrass there to survive and go on to seed. And you'll be thereby you will be boosting your regeneration efforts at the same time as you're controlling the stiltgrass. So again, the big strategic picture and goal here is to kill the stilt grass every year. This goes for all native plants. The big strategy, overall strategy, is to prevent the plants from going to seed. If they go to seed, they've won the battle for that season, and they prolong your pain. And that's what we're trying to prevent. With stiltgrass, you can do that with a grass-specific herbicide, which will exempt some of our native perennial grasses, and certainly exempt or not harm our native broadleaf plants. For example, I love hog peanut, Amphicarpia bracteata, and our stiltgrass was just laced with hog peanut, and I would come away from treating the stiltgrass with 0.5% glyphosate, so stressed and discouraged because I knew that I was killing my hog peanut and many other native plants. And when I found out about the existence of a grass-specific herbicide like cefoxidim is the name of the chemical, clethodim, another chemical, they come in two trade names. One is Post, the other is clethodim 2E. I felt released because you can spray over the entire area with abandon and get these grass-specific herbicides on broadleaf plants and not kill them. And so it almost became a joy to be using these grass-specific herbicides, which are otherwise unpleasant to use because they have a kind of a toxic smell to them. But they're very effective in killing the invasive grasses and leaving the broadleaf plants. So if you're comfortable using herbicides, those are your go-to herbicides. And check the label on those products, and they will give you the number of ounces of chemical to use. I can tell you I'll give you a formula here. In a 3-gallon backpack of Post or cefoxidim, you'll want to use 6 ounces of the chemical. With clethodim, you'll only use 3 ounces of the chemical. A little bit different ratios because they come in different concentrations than the other two broadleaf chemicals that I mentioned before, glyphosate and triclopyr. So that's your chemical approach. Your other approach, those of us who are not comfortable using chemicals, you can kill this plant mechanically, not just by pulling, but also by mowing, but not in a lawn situation. You will never be able to mow low enough to be able to prevent stiltgrass in the lawn from flowering and fruiting. It has a special type of flowering or fruiting structure called cleistogamous flowers, which are self-pollinating and will flower and fruit below the height of a mower, down to a half an inch. You have to scalp. So that's not going to do it for you in a lawn situation. In a natural area, though, you can use a string trimmer, and along in other areas where you can get a lawnmower or a bush hog, depending on what kind of situation you're in. If you wait for the end, if you're willing to tolerate stiltgrass in your face for the entire summer and let it get up as high as it's going to get, which, depending on the kind of an area you're in, I have actually treated stiltgrass that is 8 feet high. And it does not top out at 4 feet, per the last stiltgrass alert that the Blue Ridge Prism just put out last week. It'll go 8 feet if it's got something to lean on, and it's in full sun, and it's got a lot of moisture. It'll grow tremendously tall. However, all you need to do is watch when it starts to bolt and go to flower at the top of the plant. And at that point, it's completely vulnerable to weed whacking or mowing. And it's putting all its resources into flower and fruiting generation. And it's got a very weak root system, the plant sort of changes in form. It tends to lengthen. The leaves kind of narrow. You can tell just from looking at it that it's throwing all its resources into into prolonging your pain next year by going to seed. And at that point, it's got a very weak root system. If you mow it low, it doesn't have the root system needed to regenerate and grow new plants. So any weed whacking, any mowing of a plant that has gotten up high, and then you can mow down low, you know, below the first leaf, let's say, you can, that's just as effective a method to use as a grass-specific herbicide. And use that method mechanically for those of you who don't want to use chemicals.
You have to wait that long because it'll just regrow.
That's right. It makes no sense to keep on mowing it through the season. You need to let it grow high, put all its resources into vegetative growth up, and then in its final, you know, last gasp of life of an annual plant, put all its resources into flower and fruit generation, and at that point, whack it with a weed whacker.
So if you're like me and you have a lawn full of stilt grass next to a natural area full of tall stilt grass, then it sounds kind of hopeless because the lawn stilt grass is going to be making seed at the half-inch level.
That's right, and it's a particularly challenging situation. And you can use a pre-emergent and apply that in April. Timing is critical. Late March, early April, you want to get it down before the initial germination of the stiltgrass seed bank in your lawn. And it needs water. So you need to get the pre-emergent down. I think comes in the form of pellets and things like that. I've never used it, but I would refer any of you who have this lawn problem to Google on Penn State stiltgrass. These would be keywords: Penn State University stiltgrass pre-emergent herbicide control. And Penn State has done a lot of research on effective pre-emergent herbicides.
All right, perfect. Right, so I gather you don't use a surfactant with this.
A pre-emergent, no.
No, for the,
You do use a surfactant, yes, you do.
you do. Okay.
On stiltgrass, yeah. It's the same form. Again, a one ounce per gallon that of surfactant. That part of the recipe holds for grass specifics too.
Okay. And when you do, if you chose foliar spray, when do you do that?
Now.
Now?
Yep. Now.
July happens to be the time.
Say again?
It happens to be July and not June or August.
Oh yeah. So now meaning, and that also means yesterday, and a month ago, too. But you can effectively treat stiltgrass all the way up until about the middle of August.
In the middle of August, it starts to go to seed.
Yeah.
Okay. There was a question about the safety of the
Great point.
grass-specific chemicals.
They are not aquatic safe. Thanks for bringing that question up. They come in oil-based formulations, which are toxic to aquatic life.
Ooh. Okay.
So your options around stream banks and standing water are more limited, and it's more about hand weeding. I've done a lot of that, and a string trimmer.
Okay. Now, how do we tell white grass from stiltgrass?
Stiltgrass. Go to the Blue Ridge Prism website and download the stiltgrass fact sheet. I think there is a side-by-side of stiltgrass and Learsia. And if not, just the headline here would be the, uh, the sort of silvery midrib on any leaf of a stiltgrass plant. And
Okay,
it's not exactly a midrib either because it's sort of off center. It's not a symmetrical leaf on stiltgrass. It's wider, it's broader, and a Virginia whitegrass leaf is longer and slimmer.
okay. And
You could also tell. Try to tug a Learsia plant out of the ground, and it'll tug back at you. It's a perennial, so it has a relatively strong root system. Stiltgrass, by contrast, has a relatively weak root system, and depending on the soil that you're in, it's generally easily pulled out of the ground.
okay. Some of the stiltgrass has red stems, I notice.
It tends, I think, to go red in a dry situation. There was one photo, I think, that someone sent, which featured stiltgrass, with a lot of the stiltgrass leaves turning brown. And my guess was this was a drought-stressed set of stiltgrass plants, and you may see some of the stiltgrass stems begin to turn reddish when drought-stressed.
Okay, great. All right, so our next question is about autumn olive and Asiatic bittersweet control from Anne.
Yeah, so let me start with autumn olive. Again, a foliar spray on a, I'm not sure what your situation is. If we're talking like an urban suburban yard, doing a foliar spray of an autumn olive bush or shrub may not work for you, because you might have other plants that you don't want to kill, that would be in the, as it were, like the rain shadow of the herbicide. So probably what you want to do there is use the cut stump method, and that is to take a hand saw or a chainsaw and cut the stems of the shrub at a couple 3 inches or so, and then spray onto the cut stump a concentrated herbicide, and that would be either glyphosate or triclopyr, broadleaf or general herbicide, at a 25% concentration, anywhere from 25 to 50% concentration. So again, you'd be buying these herbicides generally at a 50% concentration or thereabouts. Cut them in half with water, put them in a little spray bottle, and mix them with water, and immediately spray the cut stump. And the intention is for the herbicide to be drawn into the cambium layer of the shrub and drawn down into the root system to kill it. That's that. So that there are other situations, like big old old field situations. I don't know if anybody is facing that situation on property that you own, where you have an acre, half an acre, or an extensive stand of autumn olive shrubs, and that requires a different approach, probably, than that. That's the approach that I gave you was, smaller stands, individual shrubs. It's labor intensive. To do an acre or more of that hand cutting is extremely labor intensive, and then there are other methods to dispose of them. And now is the time to do that. This is fine timing to treat autumn olive as well. By the way, I should mention here, I'm going into a lot of detail on these things because I'm being asked detailed questions. But we in the Blue Ridge Prism, I mentioned before that we give workshops 3 times a year, which last 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours. In-person versions go for 4 hours. which include field walks, and 2 to 3 hours of kind of like a classroom presentation where we talk plant ID and killing methods, general plant control methods, as well as individual plants and the best ways of killing particular species. So we do those 3 times a year, one generally in a last week of February, first week of March time frame, focusing on late winter and early spring vulnerable plants. Another one in late May, early June to focus on plants that are fully controllable in summer. And then another round in September, October, late fall and winter treatments of plants. So I would highly recommend, those of you who have really detailed questions on plant ID and treatment methods, to monitor our website for the dates of these presentations and give you all kinds of in-depth knowledge there. Shy of that, go on autumn olive, stilt grass, I think bittersweet as well is not a question that was just asked too. Porcelain berry I saw came up in one of these questions. We have fact sheets on the Blue Ridge Prism website for all of these plants and a dozen more as well. Not every plant that you'll be facing, but some of the worst actors, the most common plants, the most pernicious plants. We've got fact sheets for them, and they will provide you with a lot of detail and approaches if I'm not able to get to your question today.
Does that include pictures to help ID these plants? Because that
Yes.
was one of the questions, a reference for weed ID.
Yes, although the fact sheets, they're being two-page fact sheets with a fair amount of text in them, are a little bit light on the photos and photo ID. For that, attending our presentations, our training sessions, where we go through some of the more detailed characters of the plants, how to distinguish multiflora rose from our native roses that you don't want to kill, for example, that's important. How to distinguish porcelain berry from native grape, for example, those kinds of details we would be able to get into in our training sessions.
You seen any other good references for that? Because that's kind of it. It's not helpful to have a description of the plant unless it tells you what to look for to distinguish it from its lookalike.
Yes, there is a document out there. I'm sure it's a PDF on I'm forgetting the title, but the concept is like native plants that you don't want to confuse for invasives, or vice versa.
Maybe it'll come to you later. That's fine. Thank you.
It'll come to me sometime. I've got it. I've got it. Margaret, remind me. I'll send it to you.
Perfect.
And then
We'll
you
send it out to
can distribute
everybody.
that to.
That would be
Yeah.
extremely helpful. Thank you. Anne,
and-
go ahead.
And I think we've also got a web a fact sheet that may be devoted to that topic as well. Anyway, we'll get that to you.
All right, terrific. Anne also asked about Oriental bittersweet control.
Yeah, so Oriental bittersweet control will be dependent on scale. The Blue Ridge Prism was founded, inspired by a 10-acre infestation of bittersweet on Rod Walker's property that required a bulldozer to get through. I don't know if any of you are facing that intensity, but some of these bittersweet vines will get 6 inches or more in diameter and go up 100 feet in the tree. And you can see that in Holmes Run for example, near where I think it's Route 50 crosses over Holmes Run. Um, um, so that's a completely different beast, for example, than small bittersweet seedlings, which you can simply pull out of the ground. So you can appreciate that you're going to need full strength herbicide and a handsaw or even a chainsaw to get through intensive bittersweet infestations going up trees. And again, on the fact sheet, bittersweet fact sheet, these methods are covered. They're also covered in our workshops, how to kill bittersweet too. So there's hand pulling of small seedlings. There's the big guns of chainsaws and handsaws and 50% concentrate triclopyr, that broadleaf chemical, to kill substantial vines in their extensive root systems. Then there's also foliar spray, which and a combination of methods of mechanical and foliar sprays, which can be used too. Again, we cover these techniques in our workshops. So the foliar spray would be if you've got ground level plants that let's say are up 2 or 3 feet, and that's as high as they get, and they're sprawling on the ground, and they're reaching up 2 or 3 feet looking for something to grow on, grab onto, and then climb. A foliar application of 3 to 4% triclopyr. Again, that's going to mean 12 to 16 ounces of a 50% concentrate of triclopyr on the plant, sprayed with a backpack sprayer on that kind of an infestation. That will work. And the best timing for that is going to be August to September. Bittersweet begins to fruit. Well, that size plant will not fruit, so you don't need to worry about fruiting and timing. But the plant will senesce and begin to lose its leaves. But so that in late August and into September, some of the energy of the plant is starting to draw down into the root system, and that facilitates the translocation of the herbicide down into the root system too, where you want the herbicide to go to kill the entire plant dead. So that's a foliar application, best done on that size plant. You could have bittersweet sprawling over shrubs too. If they're sprawling over bush honeysuckle, you got a twofer there. Go to August, September, and walk all the way around the plant. Might be 5, 6, 7 feet high. You don't want to spray herbicides up above your head because you don't know where they're going at that point. You have much more control of your spraying down, directed spray. But 5, 6 foot shrubs sprawled all over by bittersweet. A foliar application works very well as well, and those will be bigger scale plants than those either at the seedling level that could be pulled or sprayed, or the 2 or 3 foot plants that are looking for something to climb onto. See, I hope you're getting the picture here. The technique kind of for the particular plant or the particular species depends on the technique that you use depends on the scale, the size, the age of the plant that you're treating.
Okay. I think I'll go a little out of order because a couple of people had sent photos and it would be fun to get those up. But before I do, can you explain about the regulations about pesticides? I know that you can't be paid to do it unless you're a certified pesticide applicator, and you don't need that if it's on your own property. What if you're a volunteer on your neighbor's property?
The same holds. If you're invited onto your neighbor's property, as long as no money is exchanging hands, you don't need a license. You don't need certification. good to, however, to follow best practices and to lead and to read the label. Good perhaps as well to attend one of our workshops or to get some orientation to the use of the safe use of herbicides before using them either on your own property or on the property of your neighbor.
Okay. All right, Cindy, I'm going to get your photos up, but I don't have your question in front of me. So if you'd like to unmute, you can explain and I'll share my screen.
Sure. And Jim very kindly has already answered, but he may want to answer for others. I have a property with a lot of old oak trees, and here is a stump of a honeysuckle. We
That's a
cut it
bush
all.
I
Yeah,
know that's a bush honeysuckle stump.
Yep, it sure is. And it's fortunately, now that I understand what you're saying, is if we do the cut and add herbicide, we'll need to cut it again. But I had been trying to figure out whether or not it was safe to use a herbicide where there is within a critical root zone of these trees. And Jim recommended that treating these with the herbicides and having it go down the cadmium to kill the roots would be okay. It would not transfer to the root system of the oak trees. I'd rather keep cutting them every year than to worry about the oaks being susceptible.
So again, if you're using, particularly if you're using glyphosate, glyphosate will have no soil activity. It's translocated down into the root system of the target plant and goes no further. There are some plants that are vulnerable and susceptible to triclopyr. Not all, but some. But thank goodness, bush honeysuckle is perfectly susceptible to glyphosate. So just use a 25% glyphosate formulation. Go ahead and recut those stumps. Well, below where you see the first sprig coming out of the stump, so that you're going to have live cambium tissue to spray the herbicide onto. That's what you're looking for, is live cambium tissue to absorb the herbicide and take it down into the root system. And that will do no harm to that beautiful white oak that showed up in that photo of yours.
Thank you very much.
All right, and let's see. So Karen A. wrote, help with how to approach weeding the bulk of my backyard with tall, short, and ground cover invasives, including plenty of poison ivy in preparation for fall native plantings. So let me get her photos up. Wait just a second. Okay. Several pictures.
Can you blow that up a little bit, or zoom in a little bit, Margaret,
Let me see if I can.
so we can see the array of plants? And whose question is that?
This is Karen's. Karen A. I'm not
So
sure
Karen,
I'm not sure that I can make it any larger from.
there's the plus up front. You see over the top of the slide, or the top. See the plus on the far left end? No, right over the photo. That's a magnifying. The left, exactly.
Thank you. So sorry. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
There we go. So that helps a bit. You know what? I saw a mix of plants here. From what I could observe, I have a particular animus for wineberry, and so that was jumping out at me. I've been killing acres of wineberry recently. Yeah, so what do you do? Again, who was that again?
Karen.
Karen? Looking for Karen to face on the screen. Karen, do you want this to be bare dirt for planting? Or do you want to preserve some plants, natives that you value, and then add some more plants?
So, yeah, I actually have got a grant for conservation landscaping in the backyard. So I am trying to take everything out and then rework the soil, amend, mulch. So yeah, pretty much take it down to the soil level.
Well,
There's not much back there that I think needs to stay except the trees.
Yeah. Well, I certainly, I cannot say, looking at this level of detail in the photo, to see if there's anything in there that you might want to hold on to. But that's a glyphosate. That's that droughty stiltgrass stand,
Yes, it is.
right?
Yes, it is. It's everywhere.
Yeah. So if you're sure that there's nothing that you want to hold on to in there, then you can do a broadcast spray with a backpack sprayer of glyphosate, and that'll kill everything.
And that's what I've been listening since you started. That's what it sure sounded like. It sounds like, well, that's my answer. I need to get a backpack sprayer and go at it.
Yes, you do. And then you'll be a very valuable person to your friends.
Well, do you really need a backpack, or how about one of those things that you pump up?
Well, it depends on the scale. Karen, how big is your area? Give me footage.
I don't know offhand. I mean, I know I did the calculations. Maybe it's like 3,500 square feet. Is that the backyard? It's a backyard in North Springfield.
Yeah, but that's only 10 feet by 35 feet.
No, yeah, I mean, it's huge. So no, it's it's huge. I don't have the dimensions. They're over there. I mean, it's huge. It's a backyard.
How much bigger than 10 by 30? Twice that? Three times that?
Let me think again.
Because you might be able to
Yeah,
use
it's like
a pump.
20 by, I think it was going to be like 20 by 32 feet.
That's maybe 6,000. Yeah, or that's 600 square feet. Yeah, kind of your call, backpack sprayer or a hand pump sprayer. That's a lot of pumping. And you may not be able to get to shrubs very conveniently with a pump sprayer. So I'd recommend
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it'll be an experience and fun. I'll give it a try.
Great.
Okay, right. So it's after 6. Don't know if you had any time to answer the last couple of questions, or should we call it quits?
I'm still good, Margaret.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, someone had the sort of the general question. This was Brian, who I don't see anymore. But what do you do about when your neighbor's full of invasives? How do you suggest dealing with that? Any hints?
Yeah, I touched on that issue earlier on. Plants don't know property boundaries, of course, and they move around, and so this does imply building friendly relations with your neighbors, and trying to get into that conversation with them in as easy and gentle and inviting a way as possible. At the same time, realizing that they may not be invested in the issue nearly to the extent that you are. So the best you might be able to hope for is authorization to take care of their problem, which they experience more as your problem than their problem. And so if you're willing to do the work for them, that'll make it more likely that they'll accept your help perhaps um, uh, and be willing to control those target species, perhaps along with you. You know, going up the ladder of engagement, you might actually get them interested in the work themselves. Then you're working alongside them to do the work, and then getting them engaged with their neighbors, and then the word spreads. The approach we call that approach within the Blue Ridge Prism the area stewards approach, and we're always looking for enthusiastic landowners who not only want to go after the plants on their own properties, but are willing to extend the work out to their neighbors, and do that neighborly relationship building in service of the natural world.
And my neighbors are always happy to let me do the work.
Uh-huh.
But they don't object either. That's good.
You know, then there at the other end of the scale, of course, there's eco-terrorism, and you know, if you're not able to get the landowner engaged at all, and you sense that they just don't care, and it's right over the fence, an autumn olive shrub that's right on the fence line, you know, maybe you take care of it that way, and they never miss it. So that's a judgment call.
Okay, thanks. And then, so two other plants that were mentioned, and then we'll call it quits. I am myself interested in creeping Charlie. I'm assuming that if my yard is full of it, I just need to spray, but tell me otherwise.
Yes, and a great strategy for that would be the use of a broadleaf herbicide, or triclopyr if it's in your lawn.
Mhm.
That triclopyr product will not kill your grass, your fescue.
That's very helpful. Yes, thank you.
But triclopyr is a little bit more expensive than glyphosate, so that if you've also got creeping Charlie or Glaucoma heteracea escaping out into natural areas, and you've got valuable plants in the natural area that the creeping Charlie is invading, you can wait until the winter months, November, December, and January, as long as it's green, and use a triclopyr product when everything else that you want to preserve, again, has the nest. It's not vulnerable, it's in the ground, and you can kill the creeping Charlie with no harm to the native plants that you value in a natural area.
Great idea. Thank you. And then the last and horrifying question is bamboo.
So bamboo, that's a tough one. And I have not personally treated bamboo. I haven't had that pleasure. But the method that I hear used most frequently is cutting the bamboo just above a node. Bamboo is a grass, and so it has nodes. And then you can pour some full-strength glyphosate into the node. So it's a lot of cutting and a lot of pouring of glyphosate, to be especially conservative about the application of the herbicide, making sure that no wildlife ever touches it. You could also use, saran wrap or plastic wrap and a rubber band, and cover the cut node over. And so the herbicide just sits there and is absorbed down into the root system.
Okay. All right, take it back. It wasn't quite the last question because we had a couple questions about poison ivy, which of course is not an invasive plant, but it still can be a problem. Any suggestions?
Yeah, I have used the cut stump method, on poison ivy, a little snip on a vine, and cutting the cut end of the vine with full strength or 25% triclopyr or glyphosate is an effective solution there. Otherwise, you're doing a foliar application and a 2% application of triclopyr or glyphosate, either one, we have found to be effective on ground level vines. And typically that's what we want to do. We want to get for safety, primarily for safety purposes, get poison ivy off of the ground level as a shrub and have it up in the trees where it's flowering and fruiting and producing berries as winter fruit for birds.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that I'm willing to tolerate the fact that it reseeds when I leave it on the tree and just deal with the little seedlings. So that
Yes,
we still have it as a living feature of the landscape that helps the birds.
and so you'd be willing year after year, to go back and treat those ground level vines,
Yeah.
allowing it to grow.
It's just been my approach. You've now frozen. You got all the way through without doing that. All right. Well, that was really incredibly helpful. Thank you so much. Did anyone have anything urgent question they wanted to ask before we
Yeah,
sign off?
about 10 diehards are still.
I know.
Still
I
with
know I
us.
did skip a couple things, so if you just feel like you have to ask it, please unmute and ask now. Don't look that way. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you all for coming. We actually don't have anything planned for our next Ask the Expert, so if anyone has any suggestions, I'm happy to try and find an expert for you, so let me know. So goodbye, everybody. Good night.
Take care all and do good work, and remember that it's always a good day for a bad plant to die.
Oh dear. Thank you.
With that,
On that note, bye-bye.
take care.